Welcome again. My name is Charis. I am the Senior Marketing Manager here at Sashco. I've been here for 20 years now. Started out in customer service, moved my way over into marketing, have been involved on the log home side the entire time. And I'll let Jim introduce himself.
Yep, and I'm Jim Barnes. I am the senior chemist here in charge of stains and coatings at Sashco. I've been doing this for about 30 years. I came out of the paint world, so I know all about paints and stains and varnishes and waterproofers and all kinds of stuff like that. But then for the last 15 years or so, I've been doing log homes.
Yeah, here with us. So we're glad to have him.
Yep.
Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, there's a little chat bar at the top of your screen. You can put questions in there. Christian will be monitoring that, and we'll be making sure to make some time for questions this afternoon. This is going to take us probably about an hour after Q&A, and there is no way we can cover all of the science of different stain technologies in an hour. So you'll probably have more questions after this. At the end, our phone number will be there. You can always call us here at Sashco. We're happy to answer the questions that you come up with, even if they're random and obscure. We'll find you an answer. We got a lot of resources that we can get after to get you answers. So we're going to go through different stain technologies. I put on there, it's more than water-based and oil-based. That's what people talk about, but there's more to it than that. Pros and cons, best places to apply each of those, how to choose a color. And we're actually going to go through some design tips if we have time today that are going to really help with the long-term durability of both any finishes that you put on your home and your home itself. So we're going to go through all of that, we hope, in about an hour. And here we go. We're taking off because it is going to take us a bit.
All right, staining. We're going to assume that when you go to stain, that you've already done the proper prep. Now that means really that we're looking at sound wood. That means it's not loose at the surface. There's no gray wood or yellowed wood that will cause adhesion problems later. That the wood is clean, that it has some texture to it, and it's dry and warm as opposed to frozen. There's a lot of ways you can get to that point. A lot of times you can do some media blasting with some crushed glass or cob or something like that. Some people use Buffy pads or Osborne brushes. You can always go ahead and sand it. It just takes a long time on a log home. You can do proper power washing. Now that's not rinsing to just, rinse down dirt kind of power washing. That's really getting in so close to the wood that you're actually tearing some of the wood fibers off of the surface. It doesn't look real pretty when you're all done if you've done it hard enough. And that requires a little bit of desplintering at the very end as well. We're going to assume that if you are going to put on any preservatives, like a borate preservative, that you've already put that on as well. And then the last two things on that list are the tape test and the water test. And you probably don't know what those are. If you look at this log on the right-hand side of the screen, that has already been briefly glass blasted. And you can still see that there's a little bit of stain left in certain spots on that log. Now, if you're wondering, if you go ahead and do something like this, you're wondering, have I got everything off? Is that on there tight, or is it, still loose? You can go back up to those areas of stain like that, and you can put on a piece of packing tape, put it on, rub it on real good and hard, and then rip it off. And if that stain comes off with the tape, it's probably not sound. You need to do some more prep to remove the rest of that stain. If, however, that stain sticks tightly to the wood, you're probably going to be okay if you want to stain at that point. You will have color differences because the stain that you put on at that point isn't going to, penetrate through that, and it's not going to erase that stain. But you're going to be okay as far as a soundness standpoint to go ahead and do that. The last thing there is the water splash test, and that will give you a really good idea when you think that you're ready to stain, how will that wood look? And that's really valuable because if you have some gray areas or something on that wood that you can't really see very well and you splash with water, those areas turn dark. and it's really easy to see just how that will stain in the future. So you might want to do that after your prep, and give yourself a little bit of dry time after that. But you can go around with a spray bottle even, and that dries out real quick. So pretty easy.
If you're interested in a webinar going more in depth on prep, let us know in chat, email us, so that we know to keep doing these kinds of things with you guys. Don't want to give you information that's not helpful, but we do want to make sure that we're getting you the education you feel like you need.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to have Jim take us through some, it's really slow.
There we are.
Some science of wood, because that matters when it comes to the stains and the types that you use and how they act with the wood.
Yep.
It's not just about stain technology itself. It really is about science of wood and what is necessary to keep wood safe, and preserved and protected from water. So jump in, Jim, but this is a whole very, very sciencey, everybody. Put on your nerd hats, because we're going to nerd out.
I get to nerd out a little bit? That's good.
Yes.
I love nerding out. Okay, well, what we're looking at here on the left is a micrograph of a piece of wood. And if you kind of look at the lower right-hand side of that, you can see it's actually the end grain, and you can see a couple of little growth lines in there. Along with a bunch of the ends of wood cells. And you can see that they really do look like a big bundle of straws. Those wood cells go back into the wood about half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch into the wood typically. And that would be very analogous to the end grain of the logs that you're actually treating. That gives you a good idea of how much stain those things will absorb when we go ahead and just apply more and more and more stain to the log ends. They will simply wick up that stain to a tremendous degree, and that will actually protect the ends of that wood pretty well. You don't want to just give it a little light coat, because it's not going to get enough stain into the wood there. Just really soak it. So I'm, for the sake of brevity, I'll stop there for here. But as we move on to the next slide here, you're going to see an even closer view of these wood cells. And it should appear now.
There it goes.
Close.
It's really delayed today. Sorry, guys. Technology is amazing.
That's all good. Well, now we're looking at a really, really close-up view of the wood cells. And if you notice those two little donut-looking holes there that are there, those are actually what we call a bordered pit pair structure. Those are the holes that go in between wood cells, and those allow water and nutrients when the tree is living to travel between the wood cells as the water starts down at the roots, and it goes through these different wood cells all the way up to the top of the leaves, etc. So it's that's just how the water moves through the tree. What's interesting, though, is that those actually have a stopper valve or a flapper valve built into them, which for the living tree is important, because if the tree gets injured, maybe woodpeckers or insects, something like that, come along and damage some wood cells and sap starts seeping out, the water or the liquid inside those tree cells starts flowing out. And as it flows out, it presses that flapper valve closed against the corresponding hole on the other side. If you look in the upper right, you can see some other structures there, and you can actually see one of those little flapper valves kind of glued over the cell there. I think we have a laser pointer ability here, but that's okay.
I don't think we do. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of cool. You can kind of see. Can we see?
Oh, there's
super delayed. It's super delayed. The mouse is delayed too, so but you can kind of see where that flapper valve is there. Well, when we apply stain to the wood, if you just spray it onto the wood, it's not going to get through those flapper valves, because those flapper valves are actually sticking upward, outward on the tree as it dries. So what happens is you need to actually back brush forcefully to push the stain into those little border pit pairs, and then actually even through them. And by doing that, you can actually create kind of like a little Velcro hook of dried stain going down into the next wood cell down, and that will actually give you some mechanical adhesion.
Now that's true of surface stains, and we'll be going through that in a minute.
Yep.
Your deep penetrating stains, they're going to flow and going to keep flowing and going to keep flowing and forever flow.
We'll talk a little bit about that in a second here. But as we look here, you can see a little bit different view of it. You can see what we're talking about. You have the what is known as the Margot and the Taurus. The Taurus is that little flapper valve in that border pit pair. And you can see that there's that little the Margot is kind of spiderweb materials that kind of hold it in place. Just kind of cool. But you can see as you apply stain to it and you force that stain onto that wood hard, then you can actually push that stain right through and create a nice little plug of stain. There you go. You can fast forward again one more.
Okay.
All right. So that's really a big chance that we have for getting mechanical adhesion onto wood when it's the first coat going onto the wood. Second coat and beyond doesn't matter as much, but that first coat really matters to really backbrush hard using like a block brush on a pole where you can really put your back into it and force the stain into the wood. That's the time to do it on that first coat. And it's especially important, as Charis said, for water-based stains. It is less important for the solvent-based stains because they tend to flow very readily and they creep through these little holes a little bit easier. But for water-based stains especially, you got to really push it in.
So now I want to go into the most important discussion of the day. What color should I pick? What color should I pick? That is actually that's a difficult question to answer, but we're going to at least give you some direction on which colors are going to last longer.
Yep. Well, in general, you can look at the world of stains, and you can think about clear coats being something that can last, maybe up to 2 years, especially if you use it bare on wood, right? This, clear coat is a little different than just a clear stain. Clear stain, 0 to 2 years. I've had it wear out in as little as 4 months before it's peeling off of stain, or off of wood rather. If you go to the lighter transparents, they're going to last a bit longer. And the more colorant that we can get in, the more UV resistance is built up in the stain. And so you get to a point where you get out to about 3 to 6 years is typical for most log stains on logs. Mm-hmm. Logs are brutal. Right. They really rip stains apart very easily. And so things just don't last very long on logs. Mm-hmm. If you go to the very last end there, you'll see opaque or paint-like stains, and those can last 4 to 10 years, sometimes even more. But we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I did want to just say the best place to start with choosing a color is to start with tone. Decide which tones you like. Do you like golds? Do you like reds? Do you like browns? Or do you like grays? Those are where you want to start and eliminate from there and then start to whittle it down. If you said, why on earth would I ever have a red log home? Don't choose any of the samples that you can get from most of the manufacturers that are red, because you're just going to be annoyed with it. And now you've applied a sample that you don't like. So start with tone and then whittle down from there. That's going to be your best bet. You'll also want to start with, do I want lighter or darker? And we just discussed the reasons why you would want to go with usually a darker color. Now there are some like white, very light colors. White pigment actually is very heavy. It takes a heavy pigment load to get a white color. So you actually get pretty good protection out of a white stain. Now, the grain doesn't show through white very well. So most people avoid a white, but it's really pigment load that matters. And for the most part, it's those dark colors that have that higher pigment load. So start with tone, choose kind of the color that you want to go with and the kind of maintenance that you're looking for. And that's going to help you whittle your decision down a little bit more easily.
And I'll add in, when you sample your colors, sample them on the wood that you're going to actually stain. Don't use a piece of scrap wood or something like that, like a 2x4 from the garage that's brand new, when your logs are really old and cracked and very, very porous. Mm-hmm. Sand those logs down and then test it on those. And you'll come out with something far closer to what the stain will actually look like on your wood than if you looked at just that 2x4.
Right.
I'd also say you can take that opportunity to even play with different combinations of stains where maybe you can layer different colors.
Mhm.
A lot of times a lighter color underneath and then a darker color on top actually looks really, really good.
Yep. So you talked about light color stains will need more frequent maintenance. Well, here's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I bet you this house isn't more than 2 or 3 years old, and it's already being redone because they picked a really, really light color.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got any customers who just insist on having that really, really, I want no color at all, I want it to just be clear, that's fine, as long as you let them know that it's going to require significantly faster maintenance cycles.
Or if you are that person who's been saying, I just really want to maintain the natural color on the exterior, put very directly and bluntly, that's not possible. On the interior, that is possible. We aren't going to be talking about that too much today, but on the exterior with UV degradation, that's even with covered porches, you can't keep it looking the same original color. It's just not going to happen. So we'll come back to paint kind of towards the end, but we're just going to tell you, don't use a solid color stain or paint on your home. It hides lots of problems that will end up costing you a lot of money down the road. But we do want to touch on pre-stained base coats. ColorFast is the one that Sashco makes, but there are other brands out there on the market. Why would you want to use a pre-stained base coat? We don't call them primers. Primers really are designed to seal things in and hide things so that you get an even color. These pre-stained base coats work a little bit differently by really being pore fillers. Wood conditioners is the common term that's used out there.
Yep.
So this is going to be a first coat that you put on bare wood. It really helps reduce yellowing, both on interiors and underneath lighter colors of stain, to reduce color shifts over the years. It reinforces the surface wood fibers, fills those pores, especially on restoration jobs. When you're doing some sort of media blasting or power washing, and those pores are super wide open. And you put any color stain on there, you put the lightest color natural stain on there over top of really porous wood, and it's going to end up being very dark.
Almost like end grain everywhere.
Yeah, almost like end grain everywhere. So a pre-stained base coat is a great idea on those restoration projects where you want to have a lighter result. It'll also even things out so you don't have too much blotchiness. It's also great for a keeper coat. If you're going to be building a new log home and it's going to be months under construction, because that's usually the way it goes, this is going to help. A pre-stained base coat is really going to help prevent some of that discoloration over time. You'll still have to go through and do your prep, but it's going to reduce the amount of prep that you have to do and certainly reduce the discoloration and keep those pores nice and tight for later on.
Yeah, so that's that sunburning that you can see. And you can actually see that here in the picture on the left-hand side there. That's a picture of a piece of just regular pine, and we put a stripe of ColorFast on the right side and just left it bare wood on the left stain. Even though it looks like it's stained there, we actually put it into our Xenon Arc weatherometer and blasted it with UV light for
500 hours.
Yeah, which is a couple years worth of direct sunlight. But you can see how on the left side there, it yellowed severely. And all that degradation there is happening in the lignin of the wood. And that's the glue that holds all those wood cells together. And that means it's severely sunburned. And it'll, if you tried to stain over that, it will just peel off.
Yep.
So, but for the interior, super important because guess what? You can keep your wood looking nice and light, which has kind of been the dream for people for a long time. And I'll say that's specifically with ColorFast. We've tested some of the other products that are out there, and they don't reduce the yellowing
as much
like that. So.
Right. So coming back to opaque stains and paints, if they last so long, why not use them on your log home?
Because they last 6 to 10 years, right?
And this is why.
Well, if you come to our zero failures class, I keep going back to people and I say, all right, paint hides, and pretty soon after a little while in the class, everybody says rot.
That's right.
And it's true. Paint hides rot. And this is one of the problems that we see in the log home industry in general. A lot of times people have decided that it costs too much to stain, or just for financial reasons, or maybe it's a flip or a foreclosure or all kinds of different reasons people paint their logs. And the problem with that is not that the paints don't protect. They do for a certain amount of time. But eventually, as the wood expands and contracts with temperature and humidity, cracks develop. And in those cracks, water goes right through and it begins to damage the wood underneath. But there's no visual indicator at the surface. So the homeowner walks by time and time again, and it looks just fine to them. And yet it's really rotten underneath. The picture up on the upper right, you see all those little pieces of blue tape all over it. Those are all places where the contractor has just come up and tapped with the end of a hammer or the end of a screwdriver and just tapped on the wood, and those are hollow spots. So they've hear a dull thunk, thunk, thunk at each one of those spots and said, "Yep, that's going to be rot inside there." Put a piece of tape on it. And they just started mapping out all the rot that is hiding underneath that paint on a wall that arguably looks just fine to the homeowner from the outside.
So don't paint, don't use solid
Yeah.
stains. It's just a bad idea.
At least
It's
not on
just
logs.
a bad idea. Believe it or not, visible water damage is a good thing because it's an early warning system. It's not a good thing because you shouldn't be having this kind of water issue, but it is going to very quickly point out where there are some design, what shall we say, weaknesses, weaknesses in the design of a home. It also very quickly point out where you might need to do some fixing of your gutters and downspouts.
Yep.
So seeing all this flame stitch pattern and tannin staining is going to show you right away where you need to do some of the work. Yeah, you're going to have to do some sanding down, but sanding down and restaining is a whole lot cheaper than replacing logs.
For sure.
So don't wait for things to look like this to do your maintenance. You want to be dealing with this much sooner rather than later, but also don't just hide it because you're tired of doing maintenance. Do stuff right the first time and you can avoid all of this.
That picture is a good example of what to look for, though. And we have a better picture here of how that process happens. We found this series of pictures back in an old paper from ages ago. That's down on the bottom side for the coatings article. But and it wasn't about our stains or anything, but it showed the process of how stains fail over time. And you can see that it's actually the same board in each one of those pictures in just successive years. You can see at the start on the left, it looks wonderful and fine. At that first year mark, if you look close by that little arrow in there, there's the start to just a little bit of a pinhole that is developed in that stain, and water has barely begun to get into that wood through that pinhole. By the second year, they've let it go a little bit longer, and now you can see how the water damage is spreading from that pinhole and actually increasing. And that just continues into the third and fourth years, and you can sort of see how that happens. Now that's important because if you can see how that happens, you know when the easy time to do maintenance is back in that first and second year. Not necessarily that's going to take 1 or 2 years before you need maintenance. In some cases it is, but you're looking for those points of water damage. And if you see any water damage and you can go ahead and put another maintenance coat of stain on, you have then sealed up those little holes and you can stop that water damage from continuing to get worse.
Yep.
So that's super important. It's pretty easy to put on another coat. By the time you get to the third or fourth year and you have to sand it all down and redo it, that's a lot more work.
It's a lot more work and a lot more money.
Yep.
A lot more money. So the number one reason why stain jobs fail.
Yep. It's interesting. I've been to a number of different homes. I don't get called out to the homes that are in fantastic condition where the stains lasting a long time and years, and the customers are ecstatic.
Now, Jim only gets to go to the fun jobs.
I get to go to the fun jobs where people have had trouble. But having been to these over the years, I came to the realization that for the most part, you're seeing failures around the cracks and checks. And as I look at those cracks and checks, I'm finding more and more that there is no stain inside those cracks and checks. So what's happened, and it happens fairly frequently, is that we go to these homes, we stain them, right? We think we're doing a really good job, right? But maybe we're not back brushing really, really well. Maybe we're not putting so much stain onto the wood that it is running down the logs and filling in every little crack and check. There's a variety of different ways you can get there, but in the end, when we leave the job, there are checks and cracks in the wood that are unstained, and the next rainstorm that comes along, the water rolls down that log, it goes into those checks and cracks, it goes into the wood, and it begins the process of degradation. You can go ahead and stain a home 1 year and come back a year or two later and have it be looking pretty poor, almost like this, if you just didn't do that.
Bare wood, wherever it is, inside a crack or a
Yeah.
check on the surface is always a bad idea.
Yep.
You need to make sure that it's totally filled. And that's why we say semi-annual maintenance checks. You need to do one in the spring to check for any damage over the winter, do one in the fall to check for any damage over the summer. Do your 1 or 2 weekends of maintenance a year. That is going to save your bacon on your log home and prevent it from being a hobby house. That's what we often hear from people, is that this is a money pit. It's a hobby house. We don't want that for you unless you're one of those people who loves a hobby house. There are those of you out there who love working on your home, and you probably don't need this message about doing routine maintenance then. So
keep this in mind, though, as far as even when you're doing paint, right? If you're painting, maybe trim or something like that, man, get that paint down inside all those cracks and checks.
Yep.
Right.
So those cracks and checks really matter. New wood is going to be pretty predictable, but old wood will surprise you.
Yep. Here you had some examples of, in this picture, of some brand new stuff, brand new wood that was stained down on the ground. They stained it really, really well. They brought it right back up. They put it up. But they had stained the rest of that wood around it, but they did not get the stain down inside the cracks and the checks. And because of that, after this was about 3 years, water penetrated into that wood and it started to destroy the stain that was on top of it, and it just burned right out. You can see just above the arrow right over there on that top upper left log, you can see the stain was just fine. It was working just fine. It's just all those areas where the water could get in that it was actually causing the problems.
These butt joints are a big problem. We're not going to talk about them today, but if you have butt joints like this, we need to talk. We'll get in touch with us. So before we get into stain technologies, just a little bit about stain color charts. Please do not pick your stain from a color chart. I spent a lot of money here at Sashco printing off these really pretty color charts to kind of give you an idea. But your wood is different. Species may be different from what we've done to take the pictures with it. Your porosity, the age, the prep, it's all different and all contributes to the final color. We had a customer send this in saying, your stain color chart is totally wrong. This is how my wood turned out, and they ordered this tan pine color, and it looks more like this natural cedar. Well, turned out that they had done some light blasting interior on red pine, which of course influences the final color of the stain. So all of the things, we have a whole paper on all of the different things that contribute to stain color. If you want that, reach out to us on our email that I'll have at the end. We'll send you that report. All of that matters, which is why Jim said earlier, do your samples, get actual wet samples, do it with the expected prep on the actual home, not on a piece of scrap wood you have sitting around, in order to give you the true color that you are going to get. Double check it. Here's somebody, actually, we had one of our contractors blast a section off and do all the samples with the expected prep on the log so that the homeowner could choose. As homeowners, do the same thing. Don't just take a scrubby brush and brush everything off. You need to take sandpaper, I tell people like 40 grit sandpaper, get down to that bare wood. You don't want it to be baby butt smooth. We talked about textured earlier, and do your samples. Do your samples. Proper prep dramatically affects the color. Dramatically affects the color. And I'm not going to read through these because I want to make sure we get enough time on the stain technology side. You guys can read the screen, but we get homeowners who call in to us all the time saying, oh, I've put 4 different colors on for samples and they all look the same. They're this weird dark brown, almost gray. And we find out they haven't done any prep. You got to do your prep. Do that splash test, take the spray bottle that's going to highlight any areas where there's still gray wood on there, where you need to do more prep. You can see that at the top edge of this log here. You can also see it down here at the bottom where not all of the gray wood has been removed. You need to remove all of that gray wood, peeling stain, get down to really great wood in order to see a true color.
Yep.
So now we
All
come to
right.
the fun, super sciencey part.
Oh boy, more science.
More science.
All right, stain types. We're going to look at actually 3 different kinds of stains. We're going to divide oil stains up into both non-drying oils, which is a very specific class, as well as the drying oils like the alkyds that we're used to. And those are very different for use on log homes. So we're going to make a very big distinction on those. Then we're also going to talk about the water-based surface stains like acrylics and things like that. So if we talk about these non-drying oils, these are oils that actually never dry. You can actually put them in a dish and they will stay liquid for decades. Think about it like motor oil or your household 3-in-1 oil, something like that. A lot of those products are out there on the market. Some of them are even called out for logs. It might be a log oil, and yet that doesn't mean that it's really great for logs, as we'll talk about in a second. But they do penetrate into the wood. They go really deep into the wood because they just continue to spread and spread and spread. In the chemistry world, we call that creep. They will creep into the wood and spread out as far as they possibly can.
Forever and ever and ever, amen. They never go away.
Pretty much.
They may come back up to the surface and then dive back down. They are always moving.
Yep.
Always, always moving. Some brand names that some of you might recognize with these. And the slide is taking forever. Q8. TWP, some of their stuff, not all TWP is, but some TWP, Wood Guard. Everybody knows Thompson's Water Seal, that beading action that they show on their commercials. Armstrong Clark, motor oil, silicone oil, the stuff that women use on their sewing machines. All of those are examples of non-drying oils.
Yep. So the problem with non-drying oils on a log home is that it can actually cause adhesion problems for any sealant that needs to go onto that log home. Now, that's really important for contractors and for dealers to be aware of, because if you recommend to a customer a system and they go ahead and put that on their home and then it fails, that can be expensive to you as a dealer or as a contractor.
Now, you as homeowners who are on here, we warned you.
That too. Absolutely, right?
So even when applied before you put your stain on, you risk what could be significant problems with sealants used on a home that has non-drying oil applied to it. Now, that doesn't always happen that it's widespread failure. Sometimes it's just a spot here and there. The problem is that when you go to repair it, you actually have to do more prep. You got to sand down that joint. You have to use a degreaser kind of cleaner to take out any of the surface oils. Then you have to caulk or reapply chinking. And even then, it's not guaranteed to last because those oils could come back up to the surface and interfere with adhesion. So we had a very expensive claim many years ago. We ended up because this is just who Sashco is and what our values are. Someone had used our chinking with Wood Guard and the chinking came off in ropes. It just quit sticking altogether. So we went ahead and fixed that job for the person because they weren't aware of the issue, but now it's kind of something that we make sure we harp on. Those non-drying oils could create a very expensive project for you.
Yeah, we don't pay for that anymore.
So for that reason, Sashco is not a fan of deep penetrating non-drying oils on log walls. They do have their places though, so we're going to go through some pros and cons here.
That's right. So the good parts about non-drying oils, you got no lap marks, you got no peeling, super easy to apply. They're actually great for shingles and fences and decks and even some handrails, just not logs. There's not a whole lot of need to backbrush, so that makes them super easy to apply because they creep, right? They're super easy to maintain. You just do a quick power wash and recoat, and they're fairly inexpensive. On the con side, right, the negative side, the caulking and chinking simply won't stick. You can't get water and oil to mix, right? So the water-based caulking and chinking and a lot of water-based stains that you might want to choose to switch to later in the future simply won't stick to those always liquid oils, right? So they can actually creep around behind a sealant. Even if you put maybe some chinking on first, they can actually go creep around behind it and soften the adhesion and actually destroy the adhesion of that at a later time. Typically, they also have pretty poor durability because they creep and they gradually soak into the wood more and more, and there's nothing left on the surface. So they have generally poor durability, which means you're going to go back and restain them every year or so. Sometimes you can have some dirt pickup because, again, it's an oily surface, and you can get some color transfer. So especially if you're maybe trying to do a redwood colored deck and you have white carpet right off of that area, that's not a good combination because you can track the red pigments that are just sitting in a liquid oil layer. You can track those on your shoes and right back onto your white carpet. It's not a good thing. We call that color transfer.
So Sashco's a bigger fan of the film forming stains that we'll be talking about in a minute. Just a little word picture to help you guys think about it. This is how I always like to think about it. Those deep penetrating non-drying oil stains, they have a little bit of pigment in them. Think about those as putting on an SPF 8 sunscreen and calling it good. Your film formers are like putting on an SPF 30 with long sleeves. Your UV protection is just infinitely better. So that's why those non-drying oils don't last as long. But again, they are less expensive. They are easier to maintain. So they do have their uses and their pros.
And they're good for shingles and decks and stuff.
Right.
And fences. So,
right.
So they got a place.
So moving on, our shallow penetrating drying oil stains. These are alkyd and linseed type of drying oil products.
Yep. And they actually start off as really tiny molecules of oil that react with oxygen to cross-link. That means they literally grab onto each other to cross-link and form a chemical bond, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they form a solid film. These will penetrate maybe about 5 wood cells deep or so. They creep into the wood fairly well, and so that works out pretty good. So these things are going to oftentimes be solvent-based, but you do have some versions of these oil stains that are the oil and water emulsions or oil and water dispersions. Or they call them a number of different
hybrids.
Hybrids.
That's what you'll hear a lot in the marketplace at the paint store or whatever. Oh, this is a hybrid stain, hybrid technology.
Yep.
It's an oil and water emulsion. For the most part, sealants are compatible, but do your homework. A lot of manufacturers, Jim worked at Behr for years. He knows that they would sometimes throw in silicone to help with initial water beading action.
Yep.
So do your homework, call the manufacturer, make sure that they don't have any non-drying oils. And then Sashco always recommends with our sealants, and I know that like Permachink always recommends as well, that you do a quick test to check for adhesion. Just apply a bead, let it cure for a couple of days. If it doesn't come off, you're good to go. If it does come off, there's obviously something in there interfering with adhesion.
Yep.
So some brands that you'll see out in the marketplace that are non-drying oils. Sashco's Transformation Stain, both are log and timber and siding and trim. Log and timber is an alkyd stain. The siding and trim is what would be the hybrid, as we'd say. PPG Prolux, formerly known as Sikkens. You guys are probably familiar with that. Penafin, some of the Cabots. Armstrong Clark, you notice we put that in both categories here because Armstrong Clark has both types of oils in it. And where it's used matters. Armstrong Clark, I have heard and have seen a little bit in some of our testing, does okay on decks.
Yep.
Mesmers, Sherwin-Williams Deckscapes and Woodscapes, those are both hybrid products. So those are some of the brands that you guys might hear about and see in the marketplace.
All right, good things about these drying oil stains. They got pretty good penetration. That actually gives them some really good looks, especially the oil-based versions. They really look good. If you got the people who have that classic oil-based finish look that they want, that comes from that really good penetration in the oil-based side. You can generally recoat them with no problems. They're going to be compatible with most sealants. For the oil-based versions, they can go over pretty much all the other stains to a large degree.
After proper prep, I gotta always put that in there. Don't
sure.
just slap it over top of some Thompson's that's been on there applied every 3 years. You have to do proper prep, and you need to do some sampling. Proper prep really matters. It's not going to go over something that's still waxy and oily.
Yep,
so
that's true. So, but you can have some success over most stain technologies that are out there. We talked about the great appearance of that oil-based stain. They're easy to apply. They require minimal back brushing as far, on that first coat, because they really do creep into the wood pretty well. The water-based versions are easier to clean up. They got faster dry times, lower odor, and things like that. They actually are fairly decent. But I will say that you don't get quite the durability out of those that we've seen in all of our exposures. Most of the water-based versions tend to wear out significantly faster.
Well, and that's why we hit into these cons. All drying oils will get brittle with age and then crack and peel or erode.
Yep.
All of them. There is no such thing as an elastic oil. It doesn't exist. And so there is going to eventually be some cracking and peeling, and you're going to have to go back down to bare wood and start over. When that is going to be required with these is going to really depend on the stain that you use, the quality of the stain that you use, and the amount of maintenance you do. If you're not keeping up on routine maintenance, you're going to have to do it a lot sooner. So just keep that in mind. All drying oils will get brittle with age and then crack. It's going to happen. When it's going to happen is what you need to watch out for, and why the quality matters with what you're using.
Yep. The oil-based versions also have the problems of the solvent and the oil odor. If you've been around certain solvents, they kind of stink for a while. And like a linseed oil stain, you can smell that oil sometimes for a couple months in the sunshine.
I personally like that smell, but I'm a little
weird. I know, but
so...
some people find that objectionable. So, but you do have that odor that comes out there for a time with the solvent and the oils. There are VOC restrictions. It's getting more expensive to make these things because of those restrictions, but just things to be aware of. On the water-based side, the water-based ones, because they're water-based and they dry much faster, the lap marks can become a challenge. And I already mentioned the durability being a little bit less.
The thing is, actually, these shallow penetrating drying oil stains, especially if it's an eroding hybrid kind of stain, they're great for decks. They're not, a deck stain isn't going to last anyways.
Yep.
We all know that. But those eroding alkyd types are much easier to maintain. It's a quick power wash and recoat rather than having to sand the whole darn deck down. So if you have a wood deck, you might want to consider going to one of those hybrid shallow penetrating drying oil stains, because your deck maintenance every couple of years is going to be pretty simple and easy.
Yep. Better than sanding, for sure.
Better than sanding, for sure. All right. So last category, surface stains.
All right. These are going to be your water-based acrylic type stains. They really are ones that want to just sit at the surface. They're not oil, so they don't creep. They don't penetrate by themselves. This is where your back brushing on that first coat is super important. When you put that block brush on a pole and you push hard on these things, you can force the stain into the next wood cell down. And that will give you far better adhesion on these and durability that will really make a big difference for the longevity of that particular stain. It's something you can only do on that first coat, though. But these are all acrylic type technologies, and they work quite well.
Mm-hmm. So some brands that you will see out in the marketplace, Sashco's Capture and Cascade System, Permachink's Lifeline Ultra with their advanced top coat, Olympic Premium, Weatherall's UV Guard. Some of the Cabots are water-based. Benjamin Moore's Arbor Coat. They actually have a new name for that now, and I can't remember what it is.
Sure.
They've rebranded, and I can't remember what the name is, but those are all very common brands that you'll see out there. And oh my gosh, John, you are giving me a little bit of baby little bit of baby fever. I don't want to call it fever, but I love seeing your little baby. So pros of surface stains and cons of surface stains, because even though these are the most durable, Woodlux. Thank you, Colton. Benjamin Moore's new name is Woodlux. Even though these are the most durable of the stains that you can use on log homes, they too have their drawbacks. So we want to go through all of those. They're very durable to UV and water. And when I say very durable, there's the Ritz-Carlton up in Beaver Creek, Colorado, at 9,000 foot elevation, has Sashco's Capture Cascade on it. They only have to do maintenance on that thing every 5 years. They're very durable.
Yep. Works really, really well. These actually, because they're acrylic, they don't necessarily get hard and crack and peel like the drying oils do. You can actually tune these chemistries so that they can be softer. You can actually choose to tune them to be elastic. In the case of like our capture material, it is elastic, which really gives an advantage on the logs and things like that. As they move, that capture can move with it. But in general, though, these don't crack and peel like the drying oils do. They're water-based, easy to clean up. Yeah, they work quite well.
The cons, though, wood prep is much more important because these stains rely on mechanical adhesion to wood fibers. If you miss removing some of those wood fibers, you still have gray wood, you still have loose yellow wood fibers on there. Eventually, those wood fibers are going to peel off of the wood and they're going to take your stain right with it. And it looks like peeling stain when really it's the wood fibers that are coming off. So prep is very critical with these for their long-term durability and to avoid any cracking and peeling. And of course, we talk about cracking and peeling. Eventually, they will crack and peel through fatigue. The cheaper brands are going to do this sooner because they're using a cheaper acrylic. They're using something that's not as elastic. So the brand that you use, again, quality matters.
Yep, it certainly does. Your lap marks can be a problem because they do dry pretty quickly. And you got to watch out. Some manufacturers include silicones and waxes and non-drying oils. This is especially prominent on the deck stain market. If you see a stain that is advertising a whole bunch of beading and things like that, or water resistance, be suspicious and do testing before you use it on a log home. I think I like to say every single log home needs to be sealed somewhere, at least around the doors and windows, things like that. You need to be able to seal water out in those areas. And if you go ahead and you put a deck stain on a log home that has these silicones and waxes and non-drying oils, and you go around and try to seal those up with a water-based sealant, it's just going to come out. You're not going to get a good seal, and you're going to get water damage in there. That's why we don't like to use those. So we watch out for those particular ingredients.
So just a little bit more about the different types of water-based that you'll see out there.
Yep.
You got acrylics. Again, that's paint technology. They can be very hard or brittle or very soft and flexible. It really runs the gamut. They're very breathable. They're very long lasting. This is a good tip for a lot of you. These can be used on fiber cement to give you a wood look. Got a lot of cities nowadays requiring fiber cement for the fire rating in gable ends, and people want to maintain the wood look. Well, with fiber cement, you can stain that with an acrylic. You can't do that with the oils. It'll saponify, basically turn into soap, and kind of peel up and look funny. So, but acrylics you can do that with.
Yep. We will say watch out for urethanes if they're 100% urethane, because those are generally not permeable to the water vapor, so you can actually cause the logs to rot on the inside. We don't normally see this on the outside. This is usually something that you might see on an interior finish. People put a really high quality floor grade urethane all over the interior of the logs, and then they start to rot. That's not a good phone call to get.
No. Great for your cabinets, though.
Good for your cabinets. Great for your cabinets, right? Just not on the logs. And you can have epoxies out there. You don't see those very commonly in the log world, but they're generally not great for UV stability.
Epoxies you'll see more for floor finishing than anything else.
Yep.
But we've had people say if it's good for a floor, surely I can put it on my wall. That's not true. So just keep that in mind. The other types of stains out there are the salt stains. Lifetime, Eco Wood treatment. They come usually in a powder form that you mix then with some water and you smell it and you're like, this smells a little bit like fertilizer.
Well, it's because it is fertilizer.
Aha, turns out.
Well, it turns out most of these products are simply a little bit of ferrous sulfate fertilizer, which you can get for, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks for 5 pounds at Home Depot or Lowe's or any other hardware store. And you simply put, a tablespoon of that into a 5-gallon bucket of water, and you basically got the same stuff. Effectively, it will go and it will gray the wood out a little bit. If it's brand new wood, it'll make it look a little grayer. And so you can use that. But that's, even though we have like the Lifetime name, that's a brand name. Some customers are confused by that. They think that this is a long-lasting wood protecting stain. And the simple truth is that it's just a salt that goes on the stain or onto the wood, and it doesn't really do anything to actually prolong the life of that wood in our testing and experience. You can get into some little trouble. If you have a wonderfully looking good log home already and somebody comes and wants you to strip it down and put one of these salt stains on it, like Lifetime or Eco Wood treatment, watch out, because as you strip it, you're not going to be able to strip all of the old stain out. And because of that, you're going to have some trouble getting a good match and a good treatment and aging look from that Lifetime stain, because it can't get down to the wood.
The better thing to do
on the bottom,
doors are stained with a gray stain.
Yep.
You get that nice old weathered look with the protection without any of the problems that can come with trying to put one of these salt stains over top of an existing product, and or no protection because you've just prematurely aged the wood fibers is what you've really done.
So there you go.
So I just want to take you guys through. Sashco does do exposure panel testing to see what our products, we have both our Capture, Cascade, and Transformation, are going to look like after 18 months exposure with several different competitors. You can hop onto our website and download those reports. We don't do that just to, see how great we are. We actually do it to learn about our own stains too. For sure. And what we need to do to improve. We aren't the only ones to do this kind of exposure panel testing. It takes place at our facility here in the Denver area of Colorado. Very extreme freeze thaw cycles. So we really stress the wood out, try to force it to crack, basically facing due south at our, 5,200 elevation, 5,200 foot elevation. Go and download those reports so you can see what it looks like to put some of these stains to the test and what they look like after anywhere between 18 months and 2 years. So we're going to speed through these. We're almost out of time, and I want to leave some time for Q&A too. So if you, as I said, if you've had questions as we're going through, type those in the chat and we'll make sure to get those through those at the end. But design opportunities to minimize failures to increase the durability of your stain. And yes, a lot of this can be done as a retrofit if your home doesn't have these now. A good contractor can come in and help you design some retrofitting to put these things in. Because these are the things that are really going to make the biggest difference on your stain lasting the longest.
Yep.
And it's pretty simple. Gutters and downspouts, large eave overhangs, really protecting those log ends. They shouldn't be sticking out from the end, and having a foundation that is well off the ground. So,
And all of those things are really geared at keeping water off of the wood. Water is the #1 enemy of wood. If you think about a tree that falls in the forest, you come back in a couple of years, what does it do? It rots. Why does it rot? It's because it's down there in ground contact and it's getting wet and moist and it just rots away. Well, what's the difference with our log homes? Why would those be any different if we allow those to get wet in the wood itself? So we'd like to keep the water away, and one of the ways we do that is through the gutters and downspouts. You can see that there. You can see how in the corner there, all that darkness up there, that actually came about in there. That's a good sign of rot happening. But that actually was water that bypassed an insufficient gutter system and came down over there. So
Ugh.
Interesting.
Gutters and downspouts, gutters and downspouts. I don't know how many log homes I've seen without gutters and downspouts. If you live in an area with high snow load and you don't have wide overhangs, you probably need to make sure you're getting the snow melt system installed instead.
Yep.
It's going to be difficult to expand your overhangs, and putting on gutters and downspouts will just get ripped off by the snow load. So you need to figure out another way to keep that snow melted and going through the gutters and downspouts to keep water away from your logs.
Yep.
Eave overhangs. Of course, these shield light from getting to the logs. You notice these logs up here on the top under the eave look really great. And then you get down below here. Not only are these not off the foundation, look at that nice log that's fallen off in the corner there.
Yep.
All of this has started to get some splashback. You can even see the line from the rain that's come down, hit the ground.
You mean that's not
splashed back up? Oh, well,
that's not a trail?
it's not a trail.
It's not a trail? Oh,
Could be for the mice. Perhaps they use it. I don't know, but
more likely it's an erosion channel because of the water falling 2 stories down and splashing back up and ruining the stain on 4 or 5 logs high.
You do not want log ends that stick out. You can see on these log ends here the beginnings of water damage.
Yep.
So while they're pretty, they do create a kind of a nice look. They are very difficult to keep maintained and protected from water. So having log ends that stick out is just generally a bad idea. If you have some now, you're going to want to cut them back and get them as much as possible underneath an overhang of some kind.
Yep.
You keep your logs well above the soil and the snow line. It's funny because I look at this picture and I'm like, oh, right here's a problem because snow could be sitting there. And of course, snow is sitting here and getting into this post, but their foundation is great. Their foundation, you want it to be at least 18 inches above ground, preferably 2 to 3 feet, and above the expected highest snow level.
Yep.
That highest snow level, if you get 4 feet of snow, well, you probably need to have either really wide overhangs so the snow never even gets near the foundation, or you need to have your foundation be the first story of the home. Yep. That is, that's not log. This is what we love to see at Sashco. This makes my heart happy when I see these large overhangs. There's just no way for water or sun to get to those logs.
That's up in Oregon. They get a lot of rain there.
Mm-hmm.
And yet look how good those logs look. They all look great. And that's all because they've had those large eave overhangs. It keeps all the water shedding off.
That's right. Here's another the Sierra Trading Post outlet store in Cody, Wyoming. Great overhangs on this building. You notice that the logs are not well off of the foundation, but because they both have gutters and downspouts and these wide overhangs, they'll probably be okay over the years. You know, some wind is going to probably blow some snow up there, but it's not going to be the end of the world. So, that said, I do want to say, if your foundation is not well off the ground, it is not a great idea to go and throw a rock foundation around the bottom log courses. You will suffocate those logs and they will rot out, and now you've got major foundation issues on your home. So you need to mitigate in other ways, but don't just go encasing that in a concrete foundation. We have seen that too, and it's very expensive to have to fix that.
That'd be a faux foundation.
The faux foundation, yeah.
Yes.
No faux foundations.
That's just a good picture here of some splashback. This is brand new construction. They're not even done finishing this place. Really short eave overhangs. You can see that drip line in the lower left just a little bit, but you can see how the splashback has just created a huge amount of dirt all over those lower logs. You can just imagine how wet those logs are going to get over time, and you can see how close it is down to the ground level there. This is not a recipe for good new construction. We're expecting this type of home to have major rot problems on the lower areas of these logs.
Yeah.
Fairly soon.
So here's our picture of the ideal log home.
Made of log.
I always have to laugh at this, but this is the Horyuji temple. I hope I said that right. If anybody on here speaks Japanese, I'm sorry if I said it wrong.
I think that's right.
It was built in 607. Excellent building design. Wide overhangs, huge eaves, protected from sun. It doesn't even need gutters and downspouts.
Well,
The foundation is, 5 feet off of the ground at least. And it's been standing for a couple millennium now.
Well, 1,400 years.
So yeah, not quite a couple millennium, but it's a while. So
the key though, when we look at this, is we recognize all the things that they did to keep the water off of the wood have worked, right? You can see all those principles right there. No water in the wood means the wood can last for years.
And what we tell you is that if you're doing this, you have a lot more freedom to choose whatever brand and whatever color stain you want, because you're not having to worry about the weather, the sun, getting to the wood to degrade it. Wood comes from the ground and wants to go back to the ground, and your job is to stop it from doing that. And you got to take a lot of different tactics in order to do that. So we covered a lot in about an hour. We were a little over an hour. I'm sorry, we're a little over an hour. Different types of stains, color selection, design elements. Do you have questions? We are ready for questions now. You put those in the chat if you have them. And of course, if you can't think of any questions now, but you get to talking about, what are we supposed to do next? You can contact us. I've put our phone number, our email address on here. Joanne is on the call. You see Todd, Dom. I take these questions. Contact us. We like to talk to you guys. We want to answer your questions. You can also scan this QR code here. This will take you to our order sampling page for Sashco's products. You get to talk to one of our log home guides when you request stain samples. We follow up with every single person who requests stain samples, because we realize this is not, as we say around here in these halls, Sashco also makes products for conventional construction, like bathroom caulk and that kind of thing. This isn't just a bathroom you're caulking. This is your whole darn home. We want to make sure you do it right. We want you to be successful. It's important to us, and we like making new friends and helping people figure stuff out. So request your samples or call us. We are happy to answer your questions, get you going on a good path. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and that's fine with me. Like I said, you have our information here. If you want to reach out to us. We will answer whatever comes up. Happy to help. We're also all over that log home construction, restoration, and maintenance group on Facebook. There's several of us from Sashco on there, as well as just a whole lot of pros who know what the heck they're talking about. And so you can put your questions on there and usually you get some good answers as well.
Yep.
So,
and if you've liked what you've heard today, we do have a zero failures class that we put on sometimes in the late fall,
that's right.
but usually in the early spring. We'll do that a couple times this next year, but it's we're months away because the whole busy season is upon us. So
that's right.
But
But if you are someone who's, looking to DIY it, or if you're a pro who's on the call who hasn't been through a zero failures class, it's not a commercial for Sashco products, much like today was not a commercial for our products. We teach the science of log home finishing beginning to end so that you can be confident in what the heck you're doing going forward.
That's right.
All right, we're done for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I will get this recording loaded to